another slow week. But a week characterized by much of the same, which is a deliberate attempt to divert the minds of our people from focusing on the things that matter in their lives. And so, if you look at most of the media, particularly those who are hostile to the People's Progressive Party, you will see this picture or this movie being played out on a weekly basis. And the deliberate attempt to divert people from comparing how their lives have changed on the People's Progressive Party and how it's changing, even if we still have a lot of issues to address. And generically, philosophically, if you look at it from what took place in the 5 years of APNU's leadership, APNU and AFC leadership of the country, after making all the lofty promises that they did, after claiming that they were not corrupt, they were clean, and they had all the plans to change Guyana. We now realize that that period was a period in which we had most corruption in our entire history. And there's deliberate attempt to hide that. And in a factual way, you can assess this. They stopped tendering for contracts, which were resumed under the PPP. For 3 years, no compliance with the Integrity Commission Act. For every year that the PPP has been in office since the year 2000, we have all complied with the Integrity Commission Act, which means submitting your statements of income and asset. We even saw recently that the leader of the opposition did not comply with the act. Even now, they're not complying with the act. Forget the 5 years, of which 3 years they made no submission whatsoever. We have had several ministers now charged with the large-scale transfer of land without collecting money, where the title was passed. We've had ministers who were giving contracts to themselves in their ministries, several contracts running into millions of dollars to their own company. We've had a situation where Mr. Patterson gave several contracts bypassing the tender process and to companies aligned to them or that submitted unsolicited bids. So that was the situation then. If you look today, you see the procurement, in spite of all the talk about procurement problems under the PPP, it's transparently done. People bid for projects now. They may not be happy with the evaluation process, but they have a means that is in the act to protest, that was put there by the PPP when it passed the procurement law. They have a means to do that. And all of these the awards are placed on a website, so Guyanese now can see which company has won what, especially by NPTAB, the large contracts by NPTAB. They can go there and have an indication of how many contracts are there. So when you see a social media commentator or anyone saying this company has won 5 contracts here, it is because of information that we put out in the public domain that APNU did not put out. they never maintained that website, which is a requirement of the law that was passed when I was president. The same law that removed the cabinet from the award of contracts. So people discover a company getting 4 contracts. They discover it because of the information that we put out on our website. Because we have nothing to hide. Now, I'm not saying that there are no problems with the procurement system. You've heard us many times speak about this, about corruption in some areas. We recently embarked on a countrywide discussion on this matter. The Minister of Finance and I, we were in Essequibo, in Berbice, in Region 5, in different areas, talking to contractors and the regional authorities and laying the rules out that there must be full compliance with the Procurement Act. There was training done in some of these regions. We identified several companies that are linked to public officials and in some of these regions, and we made it clear to them that whilst they hold those positions, that they cannot bid in their own name. However, if we can't take away the right to work from their family too, once it has nothing to do with their ministry. We made that clear. We've tightened up the system enormously for small contractors that we wanted to help, and there are over 2,000 small contractors that have started under the PPP. Maybe about 500-600 of them that I know of are Afro-Guyanese companies that did not exist in 2020 when APNU was there. They're now working and getting contracts. We have moved to a race-based system. We have removed a feature that APNU put in the contracts. Normally, there would be a contingency fund. Under previous PPP governments, there would have been a contingency fund as part of the contract. Last year, we discovered that was changed under APNU, and they put a provisional sum in the contracts, and that provisional sum could have been used by the engineer at his discretion. So if there is a $60 million contract, a $600 million contract, say you have $60 million in a provisional sum that the engineer could use at his discretion. Under us, it used to be a contingency fund, and if you had to tap the contingency fund for escalation in the work or the variation, you had to seek the approval of the tendering authority before you could use the money from the contingency fund. That was changed. Last year we discontinued it by circular. We just discovered it, that was a feature that they had introduced that we were not aware of. So there are lots of that. The attempt to clean up the system has been enormous. For those who want a more nuanced, studied, and a technical analysis of the fight against corruption in the tendering, they will go to the facts, not the anecdote, not picking up one project here and say, oh, this is corruption under the PPP. Look at the scale of the project, the PSIP now, the Public Sector Investment Program. Look at a large number of projects. Look at how many are completed successfully, and look at the systems that we are observing and we've put in place. And then you would see a vast difference between the People's Progressive Party stewardship in contract award and management versus that of APNU. That's one. So a lot has changed. Secondly, the newspapers and the others, those are hostile to us, would want you to stay away from, philosophically again, the hopelessness of the 5 years. If you talk to an ordinary citizen or a businessman or a taxi driver in that period, they would say, oh, money is not in circulation. Taxes, the taxes have gone too high. They put on nearly $100 billion of taxes over time. people lost jobs in large numbers. I don't need to prove that again. If anyone has eyes to see or would just go back into the period, talk to the miners, talk to the people in the forestry sector, the sugar workers, and you will get the picture of what I'm saying. 35,000 people lost their jobs, and many others who had jobs saw a decline in their income because of slow economic activities. That was the era that was there. So what should the conversation be about today? Why don't they want to talk about the following things? So jobs. How has the PPP done in creating jobs versus APNU? And if you look at it objectively, you will find that 60,000 people are working more now. I can demonstrate, I've gone through crudely the numbers. I can go past that. I can demonstrate that in great detail. 60,000 people are working now that were now working in 2020. So why do you think they want to stay away from that? The comparison of the track record. You'd never hear that. Oh, Starbuck News or somebody else or the Kaichor News would say, oh, we don't believe the numbers. Well, I can show you in the sectors. You can see the sectors, the people who are engaged back. Could go sectorally. That's fact-based. 60,000 people more are working than were working in 2020. Why isn't that the conversation today? They want to keep you away from that. And that's what matters to people if they have a job. 2, housing. Why isn't the conversation about a comparison of the record on housing? Because you know what? APNU practically did not have a housing program, and the PPP, for anyone who is objective, would see that has made huge investments, $200 billion. That's, if you take the $200 billion, that's like 2/3 of all the oil money in the budget this year for housing development alone. Big commitment. Anyone who is objective will see the 30-something thousand house lots. More and more people are getting their dreams fulfilled now. But a conversation in the newspapers will never be about that. They will want to sweep that under the carpet, so the Guyanese people will not do that comparison. Why isn't the conversation about health care? You look at the APNU period, talk to the doctors in Georgetown Hospital about the shortages, just in Georgetown Hospital, and how quickly it came about. No major development of any new infrastructure in the 5 years. We are now building 12 new hospitals that will transform the landscape of the country and rehabilitating all the others. Linden, Kokwani, Berbice, all of the others that are where they don't have new hospitals, they will be retrofitted. That should be the conversation about who is providing better health care. What about schools? What about education? If you had a conversation about that in Guyana today, 1,000 scholarship under APNU went to the ministers and their families mainly. 28,000 already studying now. 28,000 people studying on the goal alone, and another 22,000 through other programs. Why? What about university? 35% increase in university fees. Next year it's going to be free under the PPP, UG. Now this year we're writing off 18 billion of old student loans. Why isn't the conversation about education, tertiary education too? And we have moved the budget from $53 billion for the education sector to $135 billion in 4 years. 135, more than double, 160% increase in the budget. If you take out the part for tertiary education, it's $10 billion for that. So from about 50 billion to 125 billion for primary, nursery, and secondary. And that means schools, classroom improvement, teachers' wages too. Teachers' wages. I pointed this out in 2015, the teachers' wage bill was $15 billion. In this year, it's $40 billion. It's $40 billion. Why isn't the conversation about that? Why isn't the conversation about taxation? Who has taxed the people more? So APNU put tax on water, electricity, and data. The same companies and newspapers that complain today, when we remove all of that, they benefited. 14% reduction in their bills for water, electricity, and for data, because we remove the 14% VAT on that. That's not the only thing we did. When you look at it combined, it's over $40 billion we removed in the first year in APNU's taxes. That helped almost every sector. It helped the farmers, it helped the miners, it helped the people in the forestry sector, it helped ordinary people because we remove it on hinterland travel, etc. Why has the conversation been about who has taxed ordinary people more? So let's talk about drainage and irrigation and farm-to-market road support for agriculture. It's practically nothing on the APNU. If you look at it now, let's talk about highway development and building better infrastructure and community roads. Practically nothing on the APNU. The only thing that they did, the highway, was to complete the Region 3 one, which we left for them, and the East Coast Highway, which also was a PPP contract. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else. What about, I can go on to talk about the highway development, the bridges. 3 bridges of majors, maybe that they call major bridges. We have over 400 of these structures now under construction across the country that will change the lives of our people. What about the investment climate? In this investment climate alone, we had 7, 8, now 9 hotels that are going to be built, because the Hilton would be two hotels in the same stretch. So you'd have 9 international hotels operating in Ghana just in this 4-year period that started under the PPP. Remember, 2 years to COVID. Why don't we talk about that investment climate that will generate maybe 5,000 jobs for people? The only experience they had with hotel building was the Marriott that they said they would turn into a hospital. But they're negative about everything. Why don't we talk about investment in power for the future? Electricity, so we can solve the problem. Which party has made the definitive investment that would see power supply now next year double, reduction by 50%, and stable? That will have an impact on business as well as individuals. That would reduce the price paid by Guyanese by $100 million US a year. When you reduce it by 50%, that is what it translates into for benefits to Guyanese, $100 million US per year. And we have made that investment. They didn't make any investment. Not the hydro, nothing on gas. They bought a couple of old equipment for Essequibo Coast, nothing else. What about water supply? We're now putting in 13 water treatment plants and facility to clean the iron out of the water. 13 of them that would serve almost all of our people. We have a $2.7 billion hinterland water access program. Why don't we hear aren't those the things that matter to people? Jobs, housing, the lower taxes, healthcare, education, water, power supply. These are the things that matter to people. But every week, you don't hear a nuanced conversation taking place about that. It's some scandal, rumors, etc. So when people can't deal with that sort of thing because it's clear, the comparisons of the record, they have to find a lot of noise, extraneous noise, to make their case. And they're aided by the kaichor, which lacks substance, and I see the Starbuck. So this brings me now, they have a problem with the Schoonard Road now. They have a problem with everything that we built. The Cemetery Road, the walkway hasn't been completed as yet. The walkway hasn't been completed as yet. The Schoonard Road, a little bumpy, you might bump a little bit more. You know, everything that we do. The bridge will come in 1 year late. That's not true, but that would come in. Not that they would never build the bridge, would have never built the bridge. The East Coast Highway now in the Indian villages would be 2-lane, and in the Afro-Guyanese villages will be 4-lane. A 4-lane highway from Jamaica to Georgetown. That is their comment on the public infrastructure. Similar to corruption everywhere. Without regard, this is how they're approaching it. So one time the toll was too high. AFC used to campaign in Berbice. We're killing the people in Berbice now. Now the president has announced once the bridges are completed, we will be not charging any toll on the bridges. Now it's too low. And we want to give a benefit to the people of this country. So what is even worse is this Starbuck editorial. Listen to this. And as I said before, I pay attention to this because these anonymous people here. Commissioning the expensive schooner to Crane 4-lane highway on Thursday, President Ali delivered a stunner. When completed, commuters over the new high-span Demerara River Bridge will not have to pay any tolls. The same would be the case for the Wismar Bridge under construction and the crossing of the Berbice Bridge, he said. So I thought everybody would embrace this. Governments work for people. It's not monkeys that will cross the bridge. It's our people, all right? So they would have big savings if they cross the bridge. They would all benefit, including Norton if he takes a trip across to Region 3 or goes across the bridge in Wismar. It's not anybody. If Ramjatan takes a trip across, he gets the Berbice Bridge, he wouldn't have to pay. I thought it's a great thing. That's what governments do. Governments work for people, and it's a good initiative if they could afford it. So no commuter currently would balk at it. First, the president's announcement aligns perfectly with the concerns raised by Dr. Bertrand Ramcharan in Tuesday's edition of this paper about the autocratic tendencies of this government. So the announcement of toll-free benefits to our people, the people of Guyana, all of them, regardless of their politics or anything else, is become a demonstration of the autocratic tendency of the government. So this is a new one for me. It said there had been no discussion whatsoever of this decision. It's not even been in the party's manifesto. So that's the first error that they make. There has been full discussions on all of these issues. And the reason we are going to concrete structures, the reason we could not build a fixed structure in the Berbice River at that time, because one, we didn't have the resources to do so, and our capability to borrow, given our APNU's debt, was limited. But we had to get that bridge built. because people were spending hours, sometimes days, at the ferry. People used to relate. They would take their relatives to the airport to fly to New York, and they would get in and go back home, and they would fly and reach New York, and they would still be at the bridge, at the crossing, waiting to cross. People, most people, and especially the young ones, don't know about the hardships there. There used to be long lines, and the price was similar to what was charged at the toll, almost the same price that was charged at the bridge, and it was built mainly through an innovative arrangement. It was one of the most lucrative investments for the NIS. NIS made a ton of money from that bridge because it invested in a lot of the preference shares that had a higher ranking and the subordinate debt. And they made a ton of money. The people in Berbice got a bridge. They didn't have to pay much more than what they were paying to cross with a vehicle, but they didn't have to wait. And we didn't have to go to the treasury. It was because of the innovation of the government. We could not do a fixed structure at that time, a causeway, like what Patterson wanted to do across the Demerara River, because if you had done a causeway anywhere, at Everton or there, it would have practically shut down the river forever. So we knew that towards the end of the life of this project, not that the pontoons are going to disappear, but they had a 20 years concession. Now we're in the 17th year of the concession, that you had to replace it. The feasibility study was done last week. I pointed out how comprehensive it was, and we're now moving to build up a bridge there. So they used to complain about the tolls here. But what's wrong with giving people toll-free access? Every one of these bridges now will be 4-lane concrete structure. 2 are under construction. So the maintenance costs, this is a 75 years live bridge with little or no maintenance. You don't have moving parts anymore. So the cost of maintenance plummets. They make a point about who's going to pay for the maintenance of the bridge. You don't even have, it's toll free, you don't even have to put people there because people just drive across. Maybe they have stoplight or something to regulate the traffic to see it's done properly, but people just drive across. So it's like the Kanchi Bridge. You just drive over. You don't have very little maintenance costs. And then the people of this country will benefit. Just imagine if you want to develop Berbice now, and you have the Deepwater Harbor across there, and containers start landing there. You can't bring it back this way. Because under that bridge, you have weight restriction. The same thing like the floating bridge. You can't bring heavy trucks or anything across or containers. It's essential for the territorial integration of Guyana and also for the development of these regions that are populous. 5 and 6, 3 and 4 are the most populated areas. But the bulk of our population live in these areas. So what's wrong with giving toll-free? But it's dictatorship now. Ali is a dictator, autocratic. Ali announces toll-free thing, not taking away people's rights or freedom of speech or anything. He's saying, oh, you're going to have a benefit from the government. Once we finish these bridges, you're going to not have to pay toll. But he becomes autocratic now because he didn't consult with the NGOs. He didn't consult with the editor of Kaichor News or Stabroek News to announce this policy. He's autocratic, must consult with everyone. When the people elect you for 5 years, they expect you to fulfill your promises and to do things that benefit them. Not everything has to be in your manifesto. We've surpassed our manifesto a long time. We've surpassed our manifesto a long, long time. The other party didn't even look back at their manifesto. And so this has become autocratic. And they repeat in the same editorial all the things we have given answers to already. They spoke about, oh, we took too much money out of the NRF. So we pointed out already that in Guyana's case, we've started saving. Norway did not save a cent for the first 25 years. They used Norway as the model for a country that has used oil money well. Norway did not save a cent for the first 25 years after it started producing oil. And it did, and it had a higher per capita income at the starting point. But they would use Norway as the model for managing resources, but make a stupid statement like this. In our case, we've already started saving, and not a word about how we have made transparent the entire receipt process for money from these oil companies, and also the spending process, because every cent has to be appropriated now. There's no direct charge on the NRF, so every cent has to be appropriated, which means open debate in the parliament as to how to use the resources. None of that has been mentioned here. Already the repetition of it. And then, oh, we're flush with oil money again. So, well, I dealt with that last week about how much, if we take all of the oil money, what it means. A single project, the gas to energy project, $2 billion, is more than all of the oil money in this year's budget. A single project. But it's crucial. It's crucial for the changing this country. And that's why we're doing it. And the budget, oil money is only 70% of the budget. So it says the toll-free across the bridge, the toll-free announcement, yokes future governments to this policy. Well, APNU, we had no taxation on medical supplies, on education materials, on VAT, on electricity, on water, on data, on hinterland travel. How did that not yoke APNU? When they came into office, they put a tax on all of these things. If a miracle happens and they get into office, it doesn't yoke them, they can charge toll on the bridges. Remember, Norton said they want to remove the subsidy from electricity so that you have higher electricity bills. So they can, how stupid is this in an editorial? How stupid, who would make an assertion like this? What yokes them? What binds them to that? It's a stupid thing. And then they come back to the cost of living thing. Ali didn't mention cost of living. Well, Ali's government has addressed the cost of living in several areas better than any government that I know of. And I've dared them to come back and tell me which government has done what we have done to keep electricity prices stable from 2020 to now, to keep to ensure water prices are stable and lower, to ensure that the transportation prices are maintained, and that everyone who buys a gallon of gasoline or diesel gets a subsidy of $500, to bring down mortgage rates, to bring down data. These are the 5 components that are huge in your cost of living too. I acknowledge food prices move sometimes, but I also said any government will tell you, or any NGO that anyone can control that, it would be lying to you. You can't control the supply of vegetables to the market. Because if the vegetable are scarce, the prices would go up. If it's abundant, it will go up. If you have more middlemen, as we're finding now, if you have more middlemen, then the price goes up. Because the price that the farmers get are a fraction of what the prices are in the market. because you have 2-3 middlemen who buy the products, produce and sell them. But so they went back to this. Suddenly, from toll to bridges, they can deal with autocracy of Ali. He becomes a dictator because he announces toll-free travel across these bridges. They talk about it's an unwise how he would yoke the opposition by doing this, which is nonsense. They talk about the NRF, raiding the NRF, which is not true. And then they repeat the whole thing about the cost of living without saying the billions of dollars that this government has invested, that the opposition says we shouldn't do because they want to remove subsidy. Not in one editorial, you can have all of this. But again, not a single word about the things I mentioned before. The jobs, the education, investments, scholarships, healthcare, housing, water supply, all of that, roads for people. None of that, the conversation is not about that. It's about taking one editorial and trying to smear the government across the board on everything. This is becoming, that's why I'm saying, it's a standard playbook. The standard playbook every week for these newspapers, etc. And then they go, as I said before, they keep going around to look at this. Now, there are lots of things I have to talk about APNU this week, but let me say I find myself agreeing with them on one thing. It's a rare occasion. It's a rare occasion, but I think for the first time they've actually made sense. And they said government should focus energy on fixing math problems rather than surveying schools with pit latrines. I think this was a direct hit at Nigel Hughes from the PNC, repeating what we said a couple of weeks ago about his focus on pit latrines. He didn't discover the new school at Quebana or the one at Hosoro causing $2 billion that is more than the entire capital budget for 4 regions for all the sectors in a single year by APNU. One school, bigger than the capital budget for 4 regions across health, education, everything else. He didn't discover that. He discovered a pit latrine in a school. And then I think it was a criticism of the ministry, and I want to add my voice to it too. That they basically ran around to do a survey of pit latrines, fell into the stupid thing about trying to please these people and responding to pit latrines. We have a bigger mission here, and I agree with the PNC on this one, that it is improving education. And look at what we're doing in bulk. Eventually, everyone would have flush toilets in the school in the hinterland too. And we'll be able to do it for everyone. But we're still going there. We've just started producing oil. Everyone believes that 29,000 Guyana dollars a month, that's all the oil money for Guyanese citizens. Anyone who believes that that makes you rich needs to get his head examined. Glenlal too, included. He's a major one. So we're on the way there. So this is one thing that I actually agree with them on. That Nigel Hughes, he flies in, he found a pit latrine here. Went into the pit latrine, said, oh, I should have flush toilet here in the hinterland. So that's what his discovery. I think it was a direct hit at him basically by APNU. And I think this is in retaliation for what they're telling people on the ground about the PNC. So they go around campaigning there in Bartica and other places, and they're telling the people, we are not part of the attempt to rig the elections. AFC telling the people now, that APNU had all the SOPs. They didn't show us the SOPs. And that, lying to the people again, because you remember Cathy Hughes and Ramjatan seeing the Russians voting for people here in Guyana and stuff like that, that they had to deport. But they're lying on the PNC, putting them alone in the heat, right? So PNC must have picked it up too. The Norton and the others, that they go and say, we are not going to collate with them, lying to people again like they did in the past. And then that we believe. So someone should ask them at their press conference, if any of you would go, if they stand by the rigging, that it was the PPP who rigged the 2020 elections. It should be an interesting thing. It should be an interesting. So I think that was PNC. But you remember I said that the PNC is going around, walking around, circulating some flyers, and that the flyers are really sad. I could help them even produce better flyers. So these are the ones. They've had this a couple of years. They're going around the country. No hope under the PPP. APNU AFC government, hardly any blackouts. Hardly any blackouts. Remember one time they said they end blackouts, but hardly any investment to solve the blackout problem, because they were living off the investments that we made. They need to understand this thing called time lag. That whatever you invest today in will affect you tomorrow. So if we put in place investments, like we bought new power plants, a couple of new power plants, it ran their life. The old ones we had there, they didn't put in anything new. So the old ones are collapsing on us. And that's what we are trying to address. But we are fixing it definitively. They established over 2,700 small businesses in indigenous communities. Somebody needs to get these people examined, really examined. If you say they distributed over 15,000 titles and 5,000 house lots and stuff like that, bunch of lies. They make up these things. And of course, they have my name in it too, in their flyer. I don't know why they got to put my name in their flyer. Every flyer they got down there. Stupid, stupid flyers. And then they came out with something in the Kaichor News. I thought this was a dance they announcing. Look at this. This looks like this is their new putting oil money in the hands of people. So, to make UG tuition free. I thought we were doing that next year. This is what they're going to do. Applied research to solve hard problems. This is what they put. BPP, PNC, APNU in government will invest more billions yearly in applied research to solve hard problems. The biggest problem we got is rigging elections. How do you research rigging elections? It's like I don't understand who writes these things for them. And so I heard Holder went and read out a number of roads they want to do and stuff. A lot of these are already, we're doing them. So he said, we want to connect Linden to New Amsterdam. That's part of the Deepwater project we are speaking about, and the connection to Brazil through multiple links, road, rail, electricity grid, all of that. It's part of a bigger vision to make Guyana a major entry point into northern Brazil and to provide access out of northern Brazil into the Atlantic. And we're discussing this even with President Lula, where it started even when I was president, and we're forwarding it. He takes out a little piece. We connect New Amsterdam to Linden. You know, it's the dog whistle again. New Amsterdam is our stronghold, Linden, so it takes that little bit. That's what they're going to do, how they're going to connect that. Now, you may have 10 people using, or maybe say 1,000 people using that road. but they're opposed to building a road going to Diamond. We're spending too much on infrastructure. How many people live in Diamond coming out into the city on the East Bank, including people from Mako? And they're opposed to us building the road from Mahaika to Georgetown, or the Schooner Road from Crane to the bridge, bypassing the traffic jam at Freedom Hoop. They're opposed to all of that, too much money on infrastructure. But they will build a road from Linden to New Amsterdam. How many people would use that road on a daily basis? You just tell me. That's their priority. So every week they go with these mediocre things. It's like somebody sends them an idea. You know, people say we are like a party that is rigidly controlled. But people don't make a promise unless they clear it with the leadership. And I told you in the manifesto, personally, we went through every promise we made. I had to vet it as General Secretary and a leader of the opposition. Every promise we made, because we had an intention to fulfill them. They got Holder making a promise. Holder was working with a gold dealer recently. He had no experience whatsoever, announcing promises like wildly all around the place. But you know why people don't take it seriously? Because they know whatever they announce, they're not going to do. They don't have a proven track record of doing this. But if you see this now, when you think it's like a dance fete that you're going to, that this is their announcement. This is a fete in like the Kaichor News, trying to help them. And Sabak News says main opposition unveils sustainable road network plan. Sustainable road network plan. I don't know if they costed it, how much it cost, nothing. Where is the feasibility study now for these roads? But it's sustainable road network plan. Oh, the president's speech suggests that the PPP election campaign has begun under the guise of state contracts. Now, if we do something, we must not take the credit for it. We must say, APNU told us to do this. So APNU, everything we do now, they said they had a plan for that too, right? So we must say, oh, we want to give credit to APNU for inspiring us to do this. That is what? It's nonsense. They had no plan whatsoever. They can't even now unveil a plan. But we must not take credit for the progress in the country, although they're done under the stewardship of the PPP, because that must be campaigning. So what a political party is going to campaign on if not fulfilling their promises or improving people's lives? That is what you campaign on. But they have a big problem with it. Big, huge problem with it. Ali goes to campaign under all of these things. The editorial, I haven't seen any editorial on the PNC's, maybe I may have missed it. There was an editorial on how we are starving the city of funds. But now that we know that the PNC owes $6.7 billion based on a demand notice that was sent to MICWAC. We checked the address of MICWAC. It is Section 8 Sapphire, on which that is the Sapphire complex of the PNC. PNC says they don't owe any taxes. So I said, fine, if you don't owe any taxes, you may be right. It's MICWAC who owes the taxes. So MICWAC must pay. So that means you can't claim a 75% reduction in your taxes that Mentor pushed through based on a letter from the AFC. I think the AFC knew that the PNC owed these taxes. It's a vindictive thing. And they applied for a reduction in their rate, knowing that all of this would be exposed. But they should be asked, why did they apply for this reduction in institutional rates, the AFC? Because the mayor said they applied, and that is why the moved it forward and decided to write off 75% of the taxes owed. So we made it clear we're paying our taxes as a party. We never supported this policy, and we believe that people must pay their taxes. The PNC said it doesn't owe taxes, so therefore the 75% reduction can't apply to them because they don't own taxes, they don't owe taxes, and MICWAC, their land there is vested in MICWAC, a private company, it doesn't form part of the asset base of the PNC. So they can apply for a write-off under this policy. So the question now is, what will happen? Who are the principals of MICWAC? And whether they will enforce it. The city council now needs to collect its taxes. So just to give you an idea of what the taxes are, $6.7 billion went out from the city. That's their demand notice. Now, in the budget for this year of the city council is just over $3 billion. Last year, up to September, the budget they had spent about, just from what the council said to me, just about 1.5 billion. So maybe 2 billion last year. So if you go at last year's level, you can run the city council for 3 years based on taxes that the PNC alone owe. The whole city council. Paying all the staff, garbage collection, everything. And the government does owe $6.7 billion in taxes. So how come there is no editorial on that? That the government is starving the city. That's what Starbuck News carries. And gives wings to mentors' lies and the PNC lies. So the fact of the matter is that every road in the city has been done by the government, which is a municipal responsibility. We were in North Georgetown, Kingston, Alberton, Queenstown, Kitty. Now President went to Campbellville, we're doing the roads there. In Sophia, we awarded a contract for $1.4 billion, now another $1.3 billion in Beefield. We have built roads in West La Penitence, All Boys Town, Charlestown, West Romville, East Romville, Alexander Village. We're moved in Rassville, all of these areas, and now we are going into Lodge and many of the other areas. Almost every road in the city is built by the government. So we don't, if you discount that, that's a municipal responsibility, not central government, but we've taken that over. Every stoplight in this city we've put in place. We've built the dump site, moved it out of the city. We're now dealing with drainage. All the pumps that we're installing at Lilendal, the massive new pump with double the capacity that would drain South Georgetown faster, is being funded by the central government. I can go down a long list of things that we're doing in the city. They don't calculate all of that. But we're starving the city of funds. But as our councillors pointed out, and they're doing a good job, and I must acknowledge that, they're exposing the excesses there and the corruption at the city council, and I hope more people will look into their programs, because they pointed out that there's no accountability for the funds until now. Absolutely none. For funds transferred to them or rates and taxes. And so I'm hoping that this issue doesn't get swept under the carpet, because this is one that brings the PNC and the AFC in the spotlight, and it tells you about how they deal with institutions. They don't even believe. They operate with impunity and arrogance. Oh, we don't need to pay to the city council. How come the PP every year pays its rates and taxes? They don't believe in those things, because we're PNC or AFC. It's the impunity, the same impunity that has led them to rig elections, the same sort of thing. But of course, that would not warrant 3 years you can run the city council on this money, but that wouldn't warrant an editorial. But government is starving people for funds. So, and then the last one is about, I see the AFC put out a statement saying that the PPP is linked to the narcotics bust. So the usual from the usual useless AFC. They're just hoping that somebody will pay attention to them. Like the shine is coming off Nigel Hughes because people are seeing him for who he is. Their leader, Nigel Hughes, has been the lawyer of choice for the drug dealers. And that has been historically known. Anybody who looks around, go back into our history and see how many offenders were, and serious offenders were defended by Nigel Hughes, and you would see he outranks every other lawyer in the country and maybe combined. He was the lawyer of choice for the drug dealers. And for them to talk about this, and including Patterson, you know what happened. If there's still, it's still murky how a family member, a close family member, went smuggled cocaine through our airport into Caribbean territory. But all they put in their statement, it's PPP and relatives or some relatives of PPP people. If that had happened to one member of our family, like a brother or something like that, every day we wouldn't have been able to live it down. They just passed it off like that. You just Google yourself. This is the kind of the nastiness, the duplicity of the AFC, as though we don't remember things. So don't pay too much attention to them. They felt they had to say something, so blame the PPP. Instead, they should be happy that this actually took place, that we had a massive narcotics bust, and you know that we're protecting. Our law enforcement agencies are doing a good job protecting people in the country. So that I'd end there. And by the way, or let me just deal with one thing. Anil Nandalal made clear yesterday what the regulations for the Cybercrime Act that was passed on the APNU would entail. Now, we believe in free media. We believe in people freely expressing their views on the internet. We're not for censorship on the internet. We will promote that, people's right to freedom to freely express themselves. But the United Nations now has come up with model legislation about crime. Crime that is perpetrated in cyberspace. So the regulations will fit into the United Nations framework of what they have defined would be crime in cyberspace. It's only people who do that, like to extort people using, you know, cyber means or cyberspace to exploit people, or people who like are exploiting women. We've already, when I was president, we passed that job. People would take a photo and blackmail people, you know, of women or for all sorts of reasons. People who exploit our children, like child pornography and all of these things. These are These are important things for us. We're not going to allow that to happen in our country. But this is not to regulate what people say. We believe in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And even when it's targeted to the government, people who have a right to freely express themselves. They don't have a right to break the law, but to say what they want to say, what's on their mind. And so don't buy into this hysteria that we are coming after anyone, influencers, social media commentator, or ordinary citizens. It's nonsense. It's coming from the shrill people who are using this for criminal activity. And I think that was made clear last night too by Anil Nandala. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Samuel Suktan, NCN News. I'm not sure if you're aware of a similar statement issued by the PNC with regards to the drug bust.
No, I don't pay too much attention. I dealt with the drug thing. There wouldn't be anything. If we catch all the drugs in the world, or the narcotics in the world here, they'd have a way of linking it with the PPP or something. That's why I don't pay too much attention to these people.
They were very critical of the police force, in fact.
Yes, the usual.
Okay. So we saw two letters appearing in today's newspaper. Mm-hmm. One from Patricia Chase Green, the PPP councillor. And she said that the council should reconsider and restore the 25% institutional rate, which covers NGOs and stuff. Are you concerned that the owner of this property could apply as an NGO or community-based organization?
No. The company is incorporated under the Companies Act. It was struck off, but that doesn't mean their tax liabilities disappear. So it's incorporated under the Companies Act now. And so they can't surface back as an NGO now.
Agree with the fact that, that this should be restored, because she explained in the letter that the 25 should apply for NGOs and community-based organizations,
yeah, but
not particularly political organizations.
The city council can already under the act, they can give a preferential rate to NGOs. This was stretching it to political parties now. Stretching it to political parties. But even if the policy for political parties stands, my point is that the land is not vested in the name of the political party, therefore it would not be eligible for this new institutional rate. So it is vested in the name of a company, and companies now can't benefit from that institutional rate that they recently pushed through the city council, even after we objected to it.
Thank you.
Yes, and also Jagdeo, and that's Williams, Kaitree News. Firstly, the DEA would have collaborated with the local law enforcement to facilitate the recent drug bust. The question is, has the U.S. ever reached out with a similar arrangement to address issues in the gold sector and the mining sector in general, and also the oil and gas sector?
The gold sector, the DEA and the DEA reached out to which?
Has the U.S. ever made any similar offers with other agencies that would cover mining and the oil and gas sector to have a similar situation that the local law enforcement had with DEA?
What do you mean, smuggling oil and gas in the oil and gas sector? Because this is bringing in narcotics into the country. So what's similar? You need to be clear on that. Take your time, take your time.
One sec.
Read
It skipped
yes,
off
yes.
on the screen.
Okay, it skipped from the screen.
All right, let's. So first, let's deal with the oil and gas sector. Sir, can you say why there is no information on the natural?
All right, no, but get back to that question.
I'll have a question for last.
Oh,
I'll
you
leave them all
leave
for
it
last because it's all the way at the bottom.
That is not in the sequence.
No, I have it in a sequence. Sir, firstly, can you say why there is no information on the Natural Resources Ministry's website on how much oil is being used for Exxon's operations, but we can see the information for the gas and produced water?
Okay, because earlier I said, and I think it still stands, that they're not using any of the production for that purpose, for generating power and powering the FPSOs. They're not using any of the crude produced for that purpose. So it would be zero, which is allowed by the PSA.
Thank
for
you.
them to deduct that.
Secondly, the oil contract states that any damage above the oil spill insurance can be recovered by Exxon. Can you comment on this?
Oil contract,
It states that any damage above the oil spill insurance can be recovered by the oil company. Can you comment on this?
so what comment is there? If you're saying it's part of the PSA that Trotman signed, that is what's in the PSA. So why do you want me to comment on it? It's part of the PSA. You read the PSA, Trotman signed up to that.
Thirdly, the 20% of the Starbuck block that is to be relinquished next month by Exxon, do you envision that these are prime areas within the block?
Well, I don't know how I'd envisage what's prime area because I can't see below the surface. And the prime area is what assume that if you take it to the logical end is the area that has oil. And so since we don't have that vision to see under the sea, you need seismic for that. How would I know what's prime area or not? It could be an area that looks like open water just like that. This is all open water out there. But it could be prime, and next door could be mediocre. So that is something that we can't tell. I can't answer definitively because I don't know. It would be impossible to know what's prime or not until you have seismic. But I would assume, think about it, if you're a company and you know this area is prime, you have to relinquish 20%. Will you relinquish the prime area? It's not logical. Sometimes you have to think logically too. I know that's a rarity with Glenn Lyle, but yes, go ahead.
Sir, you have steadfastly defended the award of the contract to the one-year-old company Fulcrum to monetize Guyana's gas resources, despite concerns about the firm's experience. There has been some information coming to light now that the other bidders for the contract would have had more experience, but they weren't considered. Are you still standing by the award of this contract to Fulcrum?
So again, we're in full maligning mode. So I saw a lot of people, and Starbuck News has weighed in on it, Jagdeo, Fulcrum, the decision, etc. This has happened many times before. It happened with Marriott, it happened with the airport, etc. Last week, you yourself asked me if I have shares in Fulcrum now. I've gone from...
Shares. I asked you, how well do you know the CEO, and
Yes, but
have you ever discussed gas monetization?
The first question was about shares. You go back and check. If it's either your memory is weak or mine.
I have never asked you about shares in Fulcrum.
All right, well then check it. But you told me also that you saw Sue one time at a function and you didn't see him, right? So you remember that. So I think your memory might be a little shallower than mine, but let's not deal with that. Let's deal with
I
the
think that
question.
comes with age.
All right, okay. Yes, and you're not that old, and you're still
You don't know
shallow.
that.
Anyhow, right. So let's deal with this fulcrum. There was a bid process that went out. Several companies made submissions. The government of Ghana, the Ministry of Natural Resources, put in place a technical evaluation team. The technical evaluation team completed their work, and there was a submission to the cabinet by ranking all of the companies. That was taken by the Minister of Natural Resources. A couple days ago, I asked him, did you know that this guy, Jesus, was part of the bid? And he said, no. And personally, I did not know too until after the award was made and I saw him at one of the meetings. So that's very clear. It was not individual based. So we asked the evaluators which came out in the public domain. Were you aware he was part of the bid and he was working for ExxonMobil? And they were aware of this, but they evaluated not just experience, is the proposal that you have. This is the mediocre kind of approach that people sometimes in the newspapers take. So first of all, you evaluate a proposal. You ask for a proposal. What are the elements of this proposal? You don't know. You just latch on to one thing, experience. But the experience is not necessarily in the person or the age of the company. It's the experience that they bring in the proposal. So I've already, when I looked at it, the first question was asked after the ministry put out their statement when the matter was raised at the beginning. I looked into this matter and I said, here are the companies associated with the bid that the evaluators looked at. They're McDormand, I think it's Schlumberger, it's Solaris, it's the ERM. These are some of the biggest companies in the world in their fields that are associated with this bid. It's their collective experience that you are evaluating here. They're part of a proposal. Not when the company is incorporated. It is the proposal. Do they have the requisite experience to develop a project of this nature? And the answer in this case is yes, because of these companies. Not the Jesus guy, but the proposal. Two, can they raise the financing for a project of this nature? And thirdly, what is the nature of their compliance with the bid document? Have you checked any of these things with the evaluator or the ministry? Suddenly it is, oh, the guy incorporated the company 1 year and he worked for Exxon. So this is such it's an environment that you work in every day that is like brain dead environment. It's totally brain dead. People write definitively without looking at understanding that when you go through a bid proposal, you're evaluating the bid, not just the individual. It is the bid, the compliance with the bid document, the collective capability, their ability to raise funds, everything. And that's how and I have great faith in the evaluators. And we did not interfere with the evaluation. They probably wanted a politician to go and say, you give it to this one. That's not happening under the PP. It may happen under Patterson. But these were technically evaluated, went to the cabinet, and the minister took it to the cabinet, evaluated it. I saw the guy there, and then I said, I know this man. And then I realized that we had a very contentious engagement when he was with Exxon over the gas price. And so it's unfair to malign companies and investors and everyone else. If we had given the Chinese company first, ranked them, they were ranked number 2. You want to bet you here, suddenly, oh, we're in the bed with China. We threw out an American company. But clearly this company had the best proposal that they submitted. It is the proposal, the compliance with the bid document, which goes beyond year of incorporation. It's such a messy situation when you have to deal with people who don't understand basics. And that is what every week we have to deal with. Yes, please.
The U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency has cooperated with local law enforcement agencies to facilitate the recent drug bust. Can you say?
Oh, this is the same one?
Can you say if the U.S. or any other country has offered any support for the management of the oil and gas sector? And additionally, don't you think it's time that we have experts to help us in the management of the gold sector as well?
Okay, so I don't think there are U.S. companies involved here. ExxonMobil is a U.S. company, and the management of the oil sector, I think, should be, the key decisions should be made by Guyanese, not foreigners, to look out for our national interests. The United States has made it clear they look out for the interests of their people. You hear both camps in the U.S. talk about America first, both Biden and, not Biden, Kamala Harris and Mr. Trump. And they both say America first. I'm hoping you're not suggesting that we also have an America first policy here. We must have a Guyana first policy, our people. And I have absolutely no regret or any worry about saying that openly. We look out for our people first and our country first. That's what we're elected to do. And so we have great relationship with the U.S. They have massive amounts of investment here. All of these franchises from the U.S., the Hilton, the Marriott franchise, the Starbucks, they're making a lot of fees from these franchises. So, and all of the other, the Popeyes and everything else, they make a lot of money from investing here too, people. So, and it's an open market, and they come in, they work, and they invest, and we're happy about that. We're open to investments from any part of the world. But we're not going to hand over the management of the oil and gas sector to another country. AFNU can do that. AFC, in fact, they did that. They got Exxon to write the cabinet decision to write the cabinet decision to approve the 2016 contract. And you have the document that shows that says that they got that. No, we're not doing that at all. So, and on the gold mining sector and the gold sector too, you'll recall we've still asked for information from the U.S. government about the gold smuggling, right? Because we don't have that information. And we have asked for the U.S. government to share that information. We have not received it as yet. We have not received it as yet. And you should ask the Attorney General where it is at this point in time, but they have not received it as yet. Yes. Yes, Kim.
Good afternoon. Kim King for Reuters. I would like to bring us back to the Fulcrum discussion for just a moment. The contract, though, is awarded to Fulcrum. Was that for the company to engage in talks with the ministry's technical team and Exxon, or does the contract award include um, execution of a project?
So they have not been, there is no project at this stage. Let me make that clear. So there is no project to monetize the gas at this stage. There is the desire of the government to monetize the gas. We've expressed that desire publicly at several fora for the past several years now. We said Exxon initially had indicated that the associated gas could not be used for that purpose. They wanted it to be reinjected to keep the quality of the wells up. They made some discoveries that are mainly gas, at least 2 discoveries. So we did not agree with Exxon. We thought that they were not aggressive enough to monetize the gas, and that we wanted to see some movement forward. So we went out to this public bid process. Now we have selected a company to work with ExxonMobil and the government of Guyana to examine the development of a project. So we believe they will be better equipped. They may have more data and more knowledge than the government to push Exxon in that direction and to give us a feedback whether the concerns are real or not from Exxon. And that's where the discussions are taking place now. There is no contract awarded for any project at this point in time. There is no project at this point in time. There is the exploration of how we move to a project to monetize the gas by looking at several options on the demand side, the cost side. And then we believe that if you do get to a project stage, that not all of this should come to cost oil, that some of it can be privately financed so that you have greater benefits flowing to Guyana. So that's where we are at this stage. So right now, there is no project to monetize the oil and gas. So Fulcrum doesn't have a contract for a project. There's no project. They just have been ranked, they were ranked #1 to work with ExxonMobil and the government of Guyana to develop a project. And we're not even sure that will happen.
They're happening right now.
These talks are taking place, and you should follow up with the minister a bit more about the discussion and the talks. But so it's again misleading. I think that Fulcrum has been awarded some big contract.
So what I wanted to get an idea of too is what exactly is in the proposals that the companies...
I don't know if they would allow the release of the proposal, but you should talk. The ministry could probably give you a great idea about, because when they showed me the differences, it's major differences between the proposals that came in. Some people did a lot of work on submitting proper proposals. So I don't know, you should ask them, because I don't think you can make public people's proposals just like that, but maybe the company might be inclined to do so themselves.
You mentioned that Fulcrum may be able to push Exxon more. Is that you see the link there between Mr. Broncalo and his past with Exxon as an advantage?
I don't know that was a consideration when the bid took place, when the evaluators looked at it. As I said before, they evaluated the best proposal. This is their view. But I don't think that it would hurt, because if he had information on the reserves there and he was working for the company, he may have information that makes this, that would cause the other party to think twice should they try to keep it away from us. That is Exxon.
Thank you. For oil now, could you state, are you in budget preparations right now for 2025?
They're all, yes, budget preparations start around August or so. So generally people start submitting very soon their proposals.
Okay, I wanted to pick your brain too on, so in the mid-year report it stated that the government expects more export value and more revenues to come from the oil sector because of the increase in production. It has revised up all its numbers. And one consequence of this is an increase in the rate of cost recovery. So more than 18 billion US is expected to come from oil this year. Of course, that's split between COVIS and the government. And 75% of that, which would go to cost recovery, is about $14 billion. And with increases in oil production every year, that rate of cost recovery is increasing. So it looks like the rate of cost recovery now is exceeding the rate of investment by ExxonMobil. Would you say that that's a fair assessment?
So everything is determined by the formula, which is 75% for cost recovery. What is in the cost bank? So these are two things. So every year you get added, every new project that has been approved, it gets added to the cost bank. And the 75% applies to it. We worked out a detailed formula, and I brought it here, showing, because it's a moving figure. If the price of oil goes up slightly, you can then recover, you can faster. That is the cost bank. You can amortize the cost bank faster. If it comes down slightly, it slows down the pace of amortization of the cost bank. Secondly, if you increase production, it also could speed up the amortization of the cost bank. So it keeps moving all the time, because prices move everything, and sometimes by shipment. But the inexorable trend or tendency is that the revenue in the future will grow significantly, because we're accelerating the amortization of the cost bank. So that's my answer to you, without getting into the numbers, because that changes based on the variables that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So the reason I pose that is because one of the criticisms you might hear is that as Exxon adds a new contract, this pushes back the
yes,
cost
but
recovery.
that's what I said. So every time we add, so we have approved X amount, 6 projects, right? And also the pipeliners on that project. So that's, say, the 7th. They are going to apply for another one. So, but I think the acceleration of the amortization is taking place because of we're operating now, the price of oil is much higher today than it was when the numbers were done. The original numbers were done, as to the length of time it will take to amortize fully the cost back. But since also we have been adding, we've been adding to the cost back, the new projects.
The conclusion that I had come to with this is that if Exxon and its partners are now recovering more in a year than they are investing, then...
So they're getting back their money that they put back.
Yeah, so if the amortization is happening at a faster rate, then the addition of new projects no longer pushes back the cost recovery period.
No, but it can't be that straightforward. It's based on a number of variables. So that's why I'm giving you the framework with every variable that affects the rate of amortization. So the few variables, one, it's the volume of money to amortize, and two, the price of oil and the volume produced. And when the formula is applied to that, in that equation, that will determine the pace of amortization. So I don't want to, because every day the number changes. Is there anything else? All right, thank you very much.